kill to protect.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. So in this episode, we're going to talk about ZELMER. And there are not many players who use her, you will never ever see her in any place, any event, any stage at all. And there is a good reason for that, but I do just want to emphasize where she is actually good at and whether she is going to be, whether it's worth your investment or not. So let's go to her first skill. Her first skill attacks one enemy 2 times, damage per hit, 50% attack. Each hit has a 15% chance of inflicting defense down for 2 turns. This can be increased to 35% chance, and the attack can be increased to 60%, means that she has 120% attack on her first skill, which is normal, and the defense down has a 35% chance. This is useless because even at 100% chance of debuff application, you still have 20% chance of getting blocked by your enemy's natural resist. So 75% chance of debuff application is already hard enough to achieve. Like, it's hard enough to put on your enemy reliably. So 35% chance of that is just not gonna happen. So this is kind of like useless, like the defense now. You can just probably buy a lottery and you're gonna have a better chance of that. And now we're going to the second skill. The second skill attacks one enemy 3 times. Damage per hit can be increased to 80% attack. So that means that in total you're gonna deal 240% attack damage. This is huge. There are not many experts that can deal 200 plus attack damage on their second skill. Usually it's gonna be on the third skill. So that means that ZELMER has 2 skills that deals above 200% attack damage, and it also has a low cooldown. Like, this one has 4 turn cooldown, this one has 2 turns cooldown, and that's why you can just keep on using her second skill every now and then. Now each hit has a 30% chance of transferring 1 debuff to them. Like, again, 30% chance is really low. But if you have her ascension at third ascension, she can, upon a crit, inflicts bleed for 2 turns. This is going to be important going into her third skill. So her third skill, Scarlet Tides, attacks one enemy, damage 220%. It can be increased by 250%. So this is a little bit higher than the standard 240% attack for the third skill attack, and its debuff on the enemy grants damage plus 20% up to 120% damage. So this is huge. Like, there are not many experts that can make use of the debuffs on the enemy to increase their damage. First one is ZELMER, and then after that they change halfway on Louis. Where's Louis? Yeah, they changed Louis halfway so that for every debuff the target has, damage plus 5%. And there is no maximum number for Louis. So even though this is lower than ZELMER, like ZELMER increased by 20%, it caps on 120%, meaning that it caps on 6 debuffs on the enemy. But every Esper can get up to 12 debuffs. So at 12 debuffs, then Louis can increase his damage to 60%, which means that half of what ZELMER can increase. And that's why ZELMER in certain condition can still deal higher damage than Louis in theory. But Louis has a more benefit because he deals percentage HP damage using his passive here. So that's why in practical use, Louis will still deal more damage than ZELMER. Hence why there are a lot of replacement for ZELMER, and it's easy to just grind your Louis instead of ZELMER nowadays. Now, going into her second skill here, just now we already seen that if you get her third ascension, you can inflict bleed on the enemy. That means that she herself can increase the number of debuffs that the enemy has. Of course, it's much better for your other Esper to do that job instead of ZELMER doing that herself. So you can either increase her accuracy a little bit, or you can just ignore that because her first and the third skill doesn't have that much reliance on the accuracy. Like, you can just ignore this one because it has a very low chance of applying. But you do want to increase her damage, because if we do go to her resonance here, the second one increase her critical rate plus 20% when HP is 100%, and then the fourth one when the target's HP is above 50%, damage plus 10%. This is nice to have. This will increase your total damage, but this one is going to be important because this one is going to affect your equipment on her, the critical rate, and together with the ascension, because in the ascension you also gain another 5%, meaning that she has a natural bonus of 25% critical rate. So that's why you don't really need that much critical rate. You can just sit comfortably at 50% critical rate. If you keep topping up her health to be at 100%, she will be able to get the critical rate that she needs. Now, going to her other ascension, like as any other DPS Esper, the first one increase attack, the second one usually increase HP, but for ZELMER case it increase her defense, which is not better than HP. Like HP is much better than defense for DPS. And then this one we already seen, it increased the crit and the bleed. And then this one, critical rate, and the fifth and the sixth one increase her attack, so 15% and 20% attack. So if she has a natural high attack, you can just increase her critical damage, and that will increase her damage by a lot. Now the rival rune itself increase her war machine here. This is quite alright because in PvP, you do hit Esper that have of like different element, so there are a lot of chances that you gonna hit Esper that has a stronger element than you, and if you miss while you are increasing your critical damage by a lot, it means that her damage will suffer a lot. So she is much better to use in a PvE situation where you can control who your target and how much debuffs you gonna put on your target. Now the Mui one is growth. This increases her health, like she gonna need that survivability because she cannot survive on her own skill. So an extra health does help her a little bit. Now going to her Divinate, the base attack increase is pretty much welcome, but the Divinate effect itself only increase the beast attack's damage by 20% if the enemy's HP is below 50%. The beast attack damage is this one, the first skill. So you don't really rely on her first skill because you're gonna use her second skill a lot of the time, most of the time, because it only has 2 turns cooldown. Now the thing is that you don't really want to invest in her because in this slide the material to level up your Esper from 50 to 60 is the same as the one you use on your legendary Esper. So her only advantage is that she deal a ton of damage if the enemy have a ton of debuff. So you got a high requirement and a high damage. But again, like I always said in all of my videos of analysis videos, if the Esper only have damage as their advantage, it will going to be very easily being replaced by the next Esper. So what you aim for when you are thinking about Esper is their utility, and ZELMER has none. She doesn't have any utility at all, whether it helps herself or whether it helps her allies. So there is no any utility at her, which makes her very, very unpopular among every single player out there. But because this is a video about ZELMER, I just do want to show you how much damage ZELMER can actually deal. So we're gonna compare her with our benchmark here, as usual, Brian. So I'm gonna use Hilda to apply the debuff, and we're gonna see how much damage she actually deals. Brian, as usual, I'm gonna use her as a benchmark because she deals 300% attack in a single hit on her third skill. And that's usually I use that as a benchmark for any other Esper that deals attack damage. So we're gonna see here if we apply a debuff, like which one has a ton of debuff. This guy. So we're gonna hit this guy which has like 4 debuffs here. So Brian gonna deal how much damage? Kablam, 34,000 damage. Now we're gonna see how much damage ZELMER can actually deal with 5 debuffs here. So ZELMER will deal 51,000 damage. So a lot more than what Brian can deal. That's how much damage actually ZELMER can deal. But then again, like I said, if your only good trait is in dealing damage, there's a lot of replacement for you coming on in the future. And the future for ZELMER is already in the past. We already have a ton of new Esper coming that already replaced her, especially Louis. Louis already replaced her really hard. So that is ZELMER. Yeah. So hopefully you guys get something of the. Oh yeah, and again, if you do really want to try and use ZELMER, I do recommend if you want to try it, go try her in Dark Star Lord, because that is the only place where you give a ton of debuffs on your enemy, and you can make use of your debuff on the enemy's debuffs using that ZELMER. Other than that, you don't really have that much debuffs on any other boss fights, and she shines more on boss fight rather than tower, because her low cooldown ability makes her rotate on her attack much more often, and you need a long battle to do that. So boss fight is for ZELMER, but a lot of replacement is already here for ZELMER. So I don't really recommend on investing on her, but if you do have the extra materials, then go for it. So that's it for this episode. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.